First, I want to congratulate you and thank you for making it with us through mid-April. You only have about 5 weeks left probably when you're watching this, maybe even a little less, of kids in your classroom. And you've worked so hard this year to build connection and safety in your classrooms and to learn new material yourself as far as conscious discipline and building your toolkit and working hard to really work on regulating our own emotions so that we can show up in that safe way for kids. And so first of all, I just want to applaud you and thank you for playing along, if you will, with us as we have worked on all of these tools together. I know one that I keep catching myself doing is with around praise and being really specific and instead saying what they did and you did it versus good job. So I'm still always working on you put the ball in the basket. That was helpful. And just stopping with that instead of good job, which is so tempting. So there's still areas that I'm working on all the time. I did ask your team over there to get us some ideas and scenarios of things that maybe you are still struggling with around implementing, and they gave me a couple of scenarios that we're going to talk through real quick. I also sent your leadership team some different Amy and Jessica have some links that will have other videos that can show you, again, I know seeing it in action can sometimes be helpful. So if you want some additional things, they can get those to you. But real quick, so one example that I heard from Amy was a child pushes another child without being provoked. So when that happens, I want to remind you, we gave you this towards the end of the year. And to me, it's really helpful to go back to the behavior and kind of figuring out, is this a child who lacks willingness? Are they missing a skill? Or have they demonstrated that they know what to do and they are not doing it? And that child is connected, that you feel like they feel like part of your school family, your classroom, you have a strong connection with them and they are choosing to still not do the behavior. So it kind of takes knowing which of those three things is going on for us to know how to respond. And so by this point of the year, one of the good things about being halfway through April is that hopefully you are starting to really learn your kids, develop those relationships, and you can tell, is this a child who's still working on this skill? Are they lacking willingness because maybe they're still struggling with connection? And again, that connection, they may have it with you, but they may have to restart every day because when they go home, they may not feel safe or connected there. And so then when they show up, maybe they're just there on Tuesday, Thursdays. There's a lot of in-between time they're not with you, that their little nervous system is in a dysregulated state before they get back into your classroom. And so it may have nothing to do with you. You may be doing the most beautiful work to create a safe and connected environment in your classroom, but they could still be showing up dysregulated. And that, 3 or 4 hours that they have with you may not be enough time to always bring them back down to a place where they can get in that green zone. So we have to just keep working that safety and connection piece. So if a child is still lacking willingness, so let's say a child pushes another child and when you try to correct them or teach them and they just don't want to have anything to do with you, they don't listen, they're not complying. This could also work in the situation where they talk about a kid who's just not wanting to participate in things of the class, like you're doing circle time and they always want to separate and not be part of the class. In those situations, it's really doubling down on safety and connection. And I know by this point in the year that can get frustrating because at this point we want to punish or have a consequence. And if a child is not feeling safe and connected, then the consequence is just going to make things worse, not better. And so I'd really evaluate, am I showing up safe and connected? Because that's another hard thing at this time of year is you may have your own graduate. Maybe you have a wedding you're planning this summer. Maybe you are starting to really struggle because you have a kiddo who's going to be going off to college and that's hard for you. Or if you're in the spring dealing with a kid with really bad spring fever and is not doing well in your home, or maybe you have financial burdens or all of the crazy stuff going on in the world is stressing you out. Sometimes it is reminding ourselves to take that few minutes in the morning before you come into the classroom to take that deep breath, recenter ourselves and check in with our own body and see how we're showing up. And then if we're doing great, then being able to do that again with our kids and really taking just a few minutes, a few times throughout that day to really give that focused attention. Maybe do some I love you rituals with that kiddo. Maybe it's reading a book with that kid, letting them be a helper, giving them a certain job in the classroom, all of those different things to help continue to build that connection and be that safe space for them. If you feel like it's a missing skill, so this child is pushing, but really they want to play, but they don't know how to ask, or they want a child to move and they don't yet know how to, or have that self-control or impulse control to not push, then we just want to use that language where it's, oh, you wanted Johnny to move. When you want Johnny to move, say, move, please. Let's practice right now. I'll help you. Or if they were pushing the child because they were frustrated, saying, oh, you were frustrated. You wanted him to go down the slide. When you want him to go down the slide, say, go down the slide. Here, let's practice right now. I'll help you. And again, you're practicing those skills. And with kiddos birth to 5, we are needing so much repetition. And so you might say, well, I've told them 10 times, but if you haven't seen them demonstrate it consistently, then we need to assume that they don't have that skill. Now, if you're working with the older kids, some of them are probably even 5 in your care now. So if you're in one of those 4s, 5s classrooms where you've seen them actually use their words and be able to navigate some of those trickier peer situations, and they're still choosing not to do it, then that's when we can kind of start to implement, or we can start to implement those consequences. And the more logical or natural we can make them, the better. And so again, going up to them and saying, oh, you wanted him to move, so you pushed him. We can't push. Pushing's not safe. If you push him again, you're not going to be able to use the slide. And then say, again, if you'd like him to move, say, move, please. Have him help you. And then if he can't practice it, we're not going to give him a lot of warnings. We're going to use our assertive voice. And we're saying, oh, you chose to push your friend again, and pushing's not safe. So we're going to be done with the slide for the day. Come over here and, let's play with the ball. But move them away from that area. It is super important that we use our assertive voice, that we set the expectation, that we make sure it's clear, that we tell them ahead of time what we want them to do, that when we give them those 2 options, that then we follow through. So if they do it again, we don't give them another warning and let them practice again. If we've said, if you push again, then you're going to be done with the slide, then when they push again, they have to be done with the slide for that day. Or that time outside. And so really making sure that we're using our assertive voice in a way that is clear and direct with the child, that they know that we're talking to them, they know what's expected. And again, that's when we know that the child has the skill. If we don't know for sure that they have the skill yet, then we're going to sit there and give them those opportunities to practice. And if you have a kiddo who's constantly pushing or biting, then it really will mean needing to stay in proximity with that child when they're in open free play. Any times that trigger them, a lot of times that's transition times. They may need somebody that's following a little closer to them. Thankfully, you guys have somewhat smaller caseloads, but classroom ratio sizes there. And so I know that can be taxing when one child's taking a lot of attention, but we're really going to look at it as, again, not how do I stop this behavior, but how do I teach this skill? And really make that goal for this last 4 or 5 weeks, is to keep that skill of positive intent in our minds, that we're not getting mad and frustrated at the kiddos, that we keep that positive intent of, oh, he's a child who's wanting something and he doesn't know how to ask, or he doesn't know how to get what he wants, and how can I teach him? We are teachers, so how can I teach him, instead of just going straight to wanting to punish? And I know that's hard, and it goes against a lot of things in us, but I also know that it's why we all got into education. If a child is being disrespectful, I want you to remember in your head that disconnection usually leads to defiance, and connection leads to compliance. So if you have a child who's being disrespectful or defiant, not following directions, all of those things, that is a sign of disconnection. And so again, it may be what they're bringing in from home, and that we're going to need to be more intentional in that first part of the day of really reestablishing that connection time with them, and really checking, again, my body language, my facial expressions. Do I look friendly when I talk to them and welcoming, or am I, already frustrated and have a stern face, or my own stress in my head is making me have a resting face that's less than friendly? And so being really self-aware, maybe asking a co-teacher, hey, it seems like Johnny's getting really disrespectful again. He and I are having trouble. What are you noticing? Are there things that I'm doing that maybe I'm not aware of? Can we be vulnerable enough to ask our co to help interpret things that maybe we don't see, that we're missing? And again, I know it feels hard, but until a child feels safe and connected, they're not going to comply, and they're not going to show up in a place willing to learn. Conflict resolution, I did send a video over to Amy and Jessica that has what we call the time machine practice. We did it if you were part of that 6-hour training a while back. I have a written form that I will attach to the email for them, and a video of it in action. If you're in a classroom with 4 and 5-year-olds, it can be a great tool. Some of you are asking for conflict resolution, how to help kids stop and really reflect and be part of learning to make it right again. And it is a great tool for that. And so if you would like that, make sure you ask them for that. I've heard a lot of talk about some bullying language that kids are using. And again, really seeing that as a teachable moment. If kids are talking about bullying, if they're coming up and tattling about a kid bullying, then you can put into place or practice some of the tattling tools that we have. And so ask Amy and Jessica for that too, and I'll reattach that. That's something we went over in training as well. But a lot of that is how to help the child use their own assertive voice. And so if they're telling you, saying, are you telling me to be helpful or hurtful? And if they're always going to say helpful, and then having them help you come up with a way to make the situation better. And so if that rings a bell, that's what the tattling stuff was on. And so a lot of times if you're hearing the bullying word, it means the child is tattling to you about a bully. And so we can have class conversations with our kids if they're 4 or 5 years old. We could be talking to them about the difference between bullying and somebody who's just having a hard time that day or not getting along or frustrated. And to make sure that we're using the bully word appropriately. Again, that would be for older kids. But for all kids, if they're tattling to you, there's some great responses in that article on tattling that I'd encourage you to check out. Last thing, in May, we'll do just a recap as you go into summer, some things to think about and reflect on in your own practice, skills you might want to build over the summer as you get some rest. It is coming, for our own ability to self-regulate ourselves, to put it into practice with our own families and world outside of school, and then as you get ready to come back in the fall. So as always, I wish you well and hope you finish strong. Thanks.